What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM here today, episode 490 here today for Wednesday, April 19, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And drop a question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it, starting with Central Man Network from YouTube. Their first question was, should Asuka be a heel? We haven't seen an Asuka heel run so far in her WWE career. That is where you are wrong, my friend. Asuka was heel for a good stretch of time. It wasn't like a hard heel turn, but she and Kairi Sane did turn heel towards the beginning, I think, of their WWE women's tag team title reign back in late 2019. That's when Asuka actually started doing the green mist on the main roster. I don't know if she was doing it prior to that point. I don't think she was. She debuted the green face paint, doing the green mist in late 2019 when she and Kairi were feuding with Becky and Charlotte. They even main evented the TLC 2019 pay-per-view for those tag team titles. Those fucking tag team titles that currently mean nothing. That didn't really mean much. Didn't mean that much more, honestly, even at that point. Headlined a pay-per-view back in 2019. She also then went on to face Becky Lynch, actually, in a rematch from the Rumble in 2019 at the Royal Rumble in 2020. And again, at that point, she was a heel. Even when she won Money in the Bank, she was still technically a heel at that point, but they kind of transitioned her over back into being a babyface because the roster needed it. Kairi left. Bayley and Sasha were the top heels of Raw and SmackDown in the women's division at that point, so they needed Asuka back in a babyface role. But she was a heel for a little while there. To turn her heel, that would be totally fine. I think they do need to turn either Asuka heel or preferably Bianca. I think Bianca's great, and I've been saying for months, and I would even say on this show when other people would ask me, oh, should Bianca go heel? She's better as a heel, blah, blah, blah. If she's over, I wouldn't turn her, and she is still over. From a character standpoint, she has reached a point where she feels stale as a character. And I do think a heel turn, especially not having been a heel in close to 4 or 5 years for Bianca, that is, I think that she would really benefit from that. The problem is that they put a lot of their marketing behind her. She does a lot of stuff with the kids, and I don't know what Make-A-Wish specifically, but like her whole entrance at WrestleMania is so babyface-esque, and Bianca is such a great representative and role model for the company. She has a reality show coming out soon. I don't know how that would affect that. It doesn't sound like, unfortunately, that's in the cards. You could turn Asuka heel, though. They need more strong heels in their women's division. They have Rhea Ripley. She's awesome. She's going to do a fine job on SmackDown as the champion over there, but we need more strong heels. Becky's a babyface. I would not turn Becky back into a heel. It's been, 6 months since she came back as a babyface, so not even that. I would not turn Becky. You have Bayley, but her booking is so, up and down. It's really hard to take her seriously. Charlotte's a babyface for now. Ronda just is, I think she's past the point of no return as far as people caring about her to the point where they were a year ago. Asuka, I complain about a lot as someone who's done it all. She's been a face, she's been a heel, she's done this, she's done that, she's done everything. We haven't seen heel Asuka in this Kana-esque run, though, with the different face paint, new music, new look. She came back with all of that, but then they reverted her back, whether it was a Triple H idea, Vince idea, Asuka idea, whatever, it doesn't matter. It sucks in that she's going back to doing the, not the mist necessarily. I mean, she has done the mist, which is fine as a nod to Grey Muta, who just won in the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame. But like the dancing and the rambling on the mic, I've talked about it ad nauseum here on the show. It's fucking awful. It's terrible. Leave that shit in the past. So if being a heel helps with that, that would be great. But unfortunately, I think the whole dancing shtick actually started when she was a heel 3 years ago because she was like crazy and whatever, and they had her dancing and doing goofy shit. I mean, I've actually never found it to be entertaining. I've always thought it was annoying. So I would really wish face heel tweener, she would ditch that regardless. That's the Asuka. It doesn't even matter to me if she's a face or a heel. As long as she is a straightforward, serious badass with the Kana-esque makeup and whatnot, which is fine. Like she was in NXT, that's all I ask of Asuka and her booking on the main roster. Their second question, thoughts on the Embassy from AEW and Ring of Honor. I thought they wasted Brian Cage in AEW. He's not a serious threat to any championship in the company. The Embassy's fine. I like the Gates of Agony. They're a good team. It's a group. It's really just a group. I don't really have any feelings on them one way or the other. They're the current, blink and you missed it, but they're the current Ring of Honor World Six-Man Tag Team Champions for whatever the fuck that means. Those belts have always, honestly, even in the original incarnation of Ring of Honor, were always pointless. Ring of Honor had great trios like 10 years ago, but it's been so long now that the championships are just not necessary anymore in that company. And the fact that we only not have one six-man tag team titles, but two, if you include AEW, to me is just stupid. AEW debuted their six-man tag team titles so late to the point now where they hardly mean anything, but whatever. The Embassy gives Brian Cage something to do. I don't mind him being the crown jewel of that faction. They just aligned with Swerve, which honestly, if it gets rid of the fucking weird-ass tattooed face guy from Mogul Affiliates and Parker Boudreaux or whatever his name is, formerly Harlan from NXT, the guy's fucking awful. I mean, I've said before, why would they release him so quickly? He seemed like he had potential. He had a good look. No, from what I've seen of him in AEW, I've seen enough matches on Dark and on TV where the guy is not ready for any of that shit. And I'm glad they took him off the show. I don't know if he's hurt, but if they just took him off the show because he's not good, that's a positive development from Tony Khan because the guy is not ready for any sort of television. He fucking sucks. So if they got rid of those two guys and put in the Embassy in their place, whatever. I mean, it's better than nothing. So listen, as long as Brian Cage is even on the show, that's fine by me. I agree, though. I feel like they dropped the ball. He's been with the company since 2020. He was a world championship contender early on for a few months. Beyond that, he's been just another guy in the roster. And then for a good year, he just hasn't done anything. He's just been sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. So he's one of those guys I really wish they would do more with. At least he's on the show now. He never wins whenever it matters most. He is not a threat, like you said, to any championship in AEW. But listen, he's at least in a better spot than fucking Lance Archer, who just came back recently, but prior to that point, even now he's barely on the show. Prior to that point, had not been on the show for like a good fucking year. And he's in the Brian Cage spot right now where I just can't bring myself to care anymore. And he's a really good talent as well that AEW also proceeded to do nothing with. Their third question, should Blood and Guts become a pay-per-view? Now, I was actually going to respond to this and say, what do you want this to become, Hell in a Cell 2.0? But then I remembered Blood and Guts, which is War Games, now also has a fucking pay-per-view, and it had even kind of its own designated event in NXT. I have never honestly liked the idea, and I think I said this after Survivor Series last year, War Games being used instead of the Survivor Series matches is cool. I'm honestly okay with that. But I think with War Games, though, unless there's something at stake, I would not have it at the same time every year. I would give it the Hell in a Cell treatment where, I mean, I like War Games more as a pay-per-view or a pay-per-view concept than Hell in a Cell, for sure. It's not even close. But that being said, I would only use War Games in case of a serious feud. Like the Bloodline stuff last year made perfect sense. Unfortunately, with the women's match, although it was a really good match, Damage Control lost so much heat at that point, if they had any heat to begin with. They just meant nothing, so for them to even do a women's War Games match was completely unnecessary. I think to have two is dumb. But listen, I understand the equality of it, though. If you have one for the men's, you should have one for the women's. At the same time, though, they should only do it when it's necessary. At least for the Elimination Chamber matches, they're not just challenging people to an Elimination Chamber match like Triple H kind of made a comment about in the post-Survivor Series press conference back in November. I agree with that. The Elimination Chamber matches are typically for a championship or to determine a number one contender to a championship. There has never been a chamber match that has not been for something at stake. There have been plenty of War Games matches where there was nothing at stake. So, to me, Blood and Guts is the exact same thing. I would not give Blood and Guts its own pay-per-view. AEW has enough shows. They have Forbidden Door now. That's 5 shows a year. They're going to have 6 this year, I think, including Forbidden Door and All In. That's enough pay-per-views for AEW. They do not need another pay-per-view, and even in WWE, if they're not, I mean, it sounds like if Vince is back, who the fuck knows. War Games every year at Survivor Series is fine, but honestly, I would rather they just do it on occasion when it actually means something, and like a faction warfare-esque match, as opposed to doing it at the same time every year. The Survivor Series elimination matches are one thing, because it's a fun little cute concept. Like, War Games is like a full-on blood feud match, where like you're using weapons and shit. The Survivor Series matches happening at Survivor Series at the same set time every year does not bother me, because they're not, feud-ending matches. War Games is. So that's why I would save it for its own once in a while on pay-per-view. Blood and Guts, them using it as a TV concept, I mean, I think the whole reason why they haven't done it on pay-per-view is because they need to have 2 rings. I know, granted, NXT used to do that, but AEW probably just doesn't want to deal with that issue, and they want more room for people to be in the arena, I guess. I don't know. I'm fine with them doing it as a TV concept and then doing it whenever it matters. Like, it seems like we are headed to an elite Blackpool Combat Club Blood and Guts match. I wouldn't do Blood and Guts once a year, every year around the same time. It kind of sounds like that's what they're doing now in AEW, but at least the matches so far have made sense. Kadeem G from YouTube, their question was, with the announcement of Wardlow versus Powerhouse Hobbs for the TNT Championship set for Dynamite next Wednesday, April 19th, tonight, do you think AEW needs to move on from Wardlow and let Powerhouse face new challengers before Double or Nothing arrives? It's nothing against Wardlow, but the Wardlow and Hobbs feud is getting boring. Getting boring? I mean, we haven't even really seen a feud between the two. Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't give a fuck about the feud, and here's why. Wardlow has been relegated to the TNT title scene for a year now. For a fucking year. Not an exact year. I think he won the championship in June of last year because he beat MJF at Double or Nothing. So it hasn't been an exact year yet. And at that point, what I thought was, the TNT title meant nothing at that point. I thought it was the right progression for Wardlow to give him something to do. Unfortunately, Wardlow's entire fucking involvement in the TNT title picture for the last year has meant nothing and has only hurt his momentum that much more. He won the championship and it was a cool moment. Got a great reaction. He went on to do nothing as champion, facing only jobbers like Arya Daivari and Ryan Nemeth, Tony. Who gives a shit? Who fucking cares? And then he lost the championship at Full Gear. He was in chase mode for a while. And now, look, granted, this isn't all AEW's fault, but he did get hurt, so he was chasing Joe for about a month or so. He lost the rematch in the final Dynamite of 2022. And then he got his hair cut. And he disappeared for like a month and a half, came back, feuding with Joe, won the belt back from Joe. And they didn't even really have their feud furthered on TV going into Revolution. They were barely on the show. So Wardlow wins the belt back from Joe to finish their feud at Revolution. And then he disappears again because he loses the championship days later to Powerhouse Hobbs, which would have been fine, and I'm glad Hobbs is champion. The problem is that Hobbs is paired with QT Marshall, who's fucking terrible. The QTV bullshit is awful. It is fucking awful. It has not helped Hobbs at all. The guy is barely on the show. Wardlow comes back last week in the most forced angle of all time where he destroys Hobbs' car. The whole thing was stupid. The whole thing was fucking dumb. I don't really care about Wardlow and Hobbs. It should be a good match tonight. I'm probably not watching Dynamite live. I did 2 weeks ago and I did this week, or last week rather. This week's show looks solid on paper. I don't give a fuck about Wardlow and Hobbs, to be honest with you. It should be a good match. Their last match was entertaining. But Wardlow needs to move on from the TNT title. It's a curse for him at this point. Like Braun Breaker said, the NXT Championship was a curse. The TNT title for Wardlow is absolutely a curse. And for Hobbs, it might just be a curse in general because it has not helped Hobbs at all. Mike Adussid, their first question was, what if WWE decides to make Roman Reigns wrestle twice at Night of Champions? That way we could finally split the titles, and each brand can have a championship at that show. Roman would officially hit 1,000 days. Or should WWE wait on a title split and do a match with Roman versus Cody Rhodes or versus Seth Rollins at SummerSlam and split the titles then? I have said this many times before, my mind has not changed. I would not split the championships until Roman gets beat. And if you're saying to yourself, well, it might be another year until Roman gets beat, or I don't want to wait until SummerSlam, or God forbid until WrestleMania, and I agree. Listen, I agree with you. But I'm not willing to compromise on this. That's exactly why Cody Rhodes should have won a fucking WrestleMania. They could have had Cody Rhodes win the belt. And then regardless of how they handled it from there, whether they let him keep the Universal Championship or the WWE title or just created a new championship or whatever the fuck the plan was, Roman has been the undisputed champion. That's the key word there, the undisputed champion. To then just create another championship, yes, the other brand does need a belt. I agree. And we also need a full-time champion that's on the show almost every week and not around once in a while like Roman Reigns. The part-time one-champion bullshit does not work in 2023. I disagree with anyone that says, oh, what about Bruno Sammartino? It's not fucking 1975, dude. We need a full-time champion on their television show most weeks, if not every week. Not every Raw and SmackDown. At least if we had a full-time one champion, like I want 2 world titles personally. But if we had one world champion that was active, like Cody Rhodes, that's better than not. At least people on the rosters have something to fight for. people like Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins are kind of left in the dust doing nothing because there's no fucking top title to go for because the champion's never there. And they're all kind of wasting their time right now because we're probably building to a Cody and Roman rematch, which Cody is the guy to beat Roman. Again, I'm not compromising on that either. It should be Cody beating Roman, but it should have happened at fucking WrestleMania when it would have mean the most. None of this chase bullshit. I'm not getting into it here again. But to answer your question, Roman wrestling twice Night of Champions, to defend both belts? Not that it can't be done, because we did see the Usos defend the Raw Tag Team title specifically at Raw 30, and then the SmackDown Tag Team title specifically on SmackDown a couple of weeks later. So it can be done, but it hasn't happened yet. And honestly, at this point, they just acknowledge him as one champion. They do have two separate lineages. I know it's very confusing. If you go to their website after a fucking year now, it still says he is listed as the WWE Champion and the Universal Champion in two separate sections. Typically, if they merge a title or retire a title, they make that very clear quite quickly on their website. They have not done that yet with the tag titles or the world titles. And they need to make that clear pretty fast. And it's been a year now, and no one knows what the hell is going on. I think it's because they want to wait until after Roman gets beat. But they should have happened on WrestleMania. I don't want to wait anymore. It's not like a patience thing. We've been waiting for 2.5 years for Roman to get beat. And I think the Roman stuff is great, but if Roman is going to lose to Rhodes anyway, it's going to be more predictable when it happens instead of a WrestleMania. 39, that is, not 40. But anyway, to make a long story short here and to answer your question succinctly, no, I don't think you should wrestle twice. I think you should wrestle on that show. It would be quite comical if they renamed the whole show Night of Champions and all this other bullshit, and then and he wasn't even there. And it's the whole night. That night specifically marks, apparently, 1,000 days that Roman Reigns has been the Universal Champion specifically, and he's not been, and he's been a champion in WWE. And if he's not even there, like, what a waste. He should be on that show. Does he face Cody on that show? Does he face Rollins? I think that'd be pretty cool. I think Rollins or Lashley make the most sense. At least Bobby right now is busy with Bronson Reed, so at least he has something going on. Rollins has nothing going on. Nothing at all. So Rollins and Roman would make sense. You know, Roman can beat Rollins and you can move on, whatever. He can finally beat the guy because he's never beaten Rollins on pay-per-view before, one-on-one. But yeah, that's what I would do. Split the titles after whoever beats Roman, and whenever that happens. That is my bottom line to you, and to everyone, actually. Do not split the championships or create another world title, which only will lessen Roman's championship. And it'll also kind of feel like a consolation prize. Oh, you can't beat fucking Roman Reigns? We'll just create a secondary mid-card. And like, no, we already have 2 mid-card titles. We don't need a third world title that feels like a mid-card championship. No thanks. His second question. Do you think we will ever see Logan Paul versus Pat McAfee, and would that match interest you, basically, is what he's asking. Yeah, I would. I do think we'll probably get that match at some point. It's like they're part-timers, I guess you would call them. McAfee isn't really around right now to kind of build it up, so it's not like he's on SmackDown commentary and Logan can go over there and like insult him or whatever. So it would probably be a while before Pat McAfee's back. Like, I don't know if he'll ever come back on a consistent basis to the SmackDown commentary team. I'm not sure what his status is full-time. I know he's still technically with WWE. I don't know if he'll be back in a regular role or just make occasional appearances. The answer is yes. I do feel like we will get that match at some point. It could be a lot of fun, so therefore, I am looking forward to it when it does happen. His last question here. This isn't a wrestling-related question, but the other day I was at the Apple store. I tried the Apple AirPod Max headphones they've got for a $500 price tag. My question is, have you tried them? And if you have or have not, would you spend $500 on a pair of headphones? Also, what's the most expensive thing you have ever treated yourself to? Two interesting / good questions. On the first thing, I own a pair of Apple AirPods. I almost said headphones. That's what I'm used to calling them. The funny thing is that I didn't want them for the longest time. I got them as a gift, as an anniversary gift from Alexa, so I didn't even pay for them. But that being said, I think they were like $150. I would honestly, personally, I listen to a lot of music. I don't listen to my headphones like when I was in college and traveling more and like walking around like more as far as going back and forth to school and being in the car and not driving, being in the passenger seat and stuff like that. When I wasn't doing all of that, I would listen to my headphones a lot more. I still do a lot now, but more so just because it's easier in certain circumstances and whatnot. my point is, even then I wouldn't pay $500 for AirPods. I love the AirPods I have now. I can't imagine not using them, like plugging the old headphones into my phone. I would do that if I still have my headphones, my corded headphones. I don't use them ever. I still have them just in case my AirPods die or I lose them or for whatever reason. And Alexis will sometimes use them as well. Those do come in handy in case I need them, but I never really need them. If anything, I actually use the earpods or whatever I'm getting so confused here. The headphones that you plug into the jack on your computer, like a regular audio jack, not like the new iPhone audio jack that's like rectangle, if that makes sense. I'm talking about the regular audio jack that you would plug into anything. I use those all the time because like when I'm out in public or wherever, I will use those with my laptop constantly to like edit audio and stuff like that. The iPhone headphones that they've had for a couple of years now, I don't really use those at all because Alexis got me my AirPods in 2020. And then I bought her pair a couple of months later that Christmas. So, and those were only, like I said, $150. I'm willing to pay that much. $500 for headphones for me is way too much. I don't think, so to answer the second part of your question, have I ever paid for something like that $500 on? No, honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm more of a cheapskate, like in the sense that, like I needed a new TV. My TV, after a decade, I've used it on and off, like I used it through college. I actually got it as a college gift 10 years ago, from my mom for Christmas, and it was a great gift. It's not a big TV, it's like a 30-inch something TV. I've used it on and off in the last 10 years. It finally shit the bed right before Christmas. It was too late. It was like a week or two before Christmas, and it was too late to ask for a new one from anyone, like Alexis or anyone that was getting me a gift. So I'm like, fuck it. I'll just wait until after Christmas to buy myself a new one. And I honestly didn't buy the exact same model. I wanted a Roku TV. And I apologize for the rambling here, but I thought this was an interesting question. I wanted a Roku TV. I was already using the Roku stick. I have a couple of Roku sticks that I've gotten for free and just have had them. I've amassed them over the last couple of years. So I just was like, all right, I already have a Roku stick. If it's the same amount of money for a new TV regardless, like same size and everything. It's like my brother has like a fucking 52-inch TV, one of the 4K TVs. I don't need that specifically. And I just need a smaller one. It's not like a family room size TV, like not that sort of thing. Like this is just a personal TV that I used to work off of and watch shows on and stuff, like when I'm going to bed and shit like that. It's really not that big of a deal. A 30-inch would suffice. So I got a new TCL. I don't know if that's a cheap brand or not. I looked it up from, I think it was Walmart, and paid like $150, $120 on a new TV. It was like, I think it might have been $100 max, $170. Would I pay $500 for a new TV if it was like a bigger size TV and I needed it for more than just myself? Then yeah, I would. But this was a smaller TV, not that big of a deal. Anything more than $200 to me was just not really worth it. So that comes to mind. That's not really something I treated myself to that, but that's not really that much. That's not really that much money if we're in the grand scheme of things as far as something. Like you said, $500 on a fucking pair of headphones. That's like treating yourself to something. You know, that's a good question. Before I hit record here, I was trying to think in my head because I'm not really one to do that. Not that I won't buy myself stuff. Like I've bought myself a million wrestling shirts over the years, but those have amassed to thousands of dollars overall, but not any individual shirt. I won't really buy myself anything super expensive unless it's for someone else. I've done that before as well. I don't really feel comfortable on something that it's like, because you said treated yourself to. You're not talking about like necessities and like, you know, other shit. The most amount of money I can remember, at least in recent memory, ever spending on myself, if we're not including like trips and stuff, like I've spent, like before I was in wrestling media, it's kind of confusing, but like before I started going to the shows for free and getting all paid expense trips and stuff to these wrestling weekends and whatnot, I would pay my own way to go to WrestleMania. Like the first WrestleMania I went to, part of it was a treat from like my parents for spring break in college, but most of like the tickets and stuff I paid for all of that myself. Specifically the second WrestleMania, we didn't fly there, but Alexis and I went to Mania in 35. I paid for everything. I paid for the tickets to go there. I paid for our travel, like the train tickets, the hotel. Alexis too, but like we paid for everything. All the meet and greets, access twice, takeover, Raw, all that shit. So if we're not counting stuff like that, you're talking like a specific item, and we're not talking like again, I've spent like more than not often, but on very rare circumstances where will I pay like a hefty amount. No, I'm not talking like $1,000 either. Like a couple $100 for a meet and greet, depending on who it was. Like The Undertaker was expensive when I met him a couple of years ago. John Cena, when I met him a few years ago, was expensive. There really aren't many cases of that. Other examples that come to mind, I'm trying to think. Like Alexis and I flew all the way to Chicago in 2019 just to meet CM Punk. Literally, like we didn't even go to fucking All Out that weekend. We were going to, and we were thinking about it. We were like, no, I'm good. We were tired. The show was great. We watched it from the hotel. But I literally only flew to Chicago that weekend to meet CM Punk, and it was well worth it. But again, if we're not including stuff like that, two things come to mind. One, and it was probably even less than the TV, but I include the TV is something I like kind of need. I spent, I think $150 maybe, or it might have been on sale for like $120, I don't remember, on one of those pay-per-view chairs from Money in the Bank 2019. Now, I bought it because I was at that show in Hartford 4 years ago and had a great time. WWE during COVID was selling those chairs from each specific individual show. And this one was on sale, and I don't own a pay-per-view chair. I've never gotten a ring. I still want to go to a pay-per-view and get a ringside chair, whether I sit in it or not. And it would have to be a show that I drive to. I'm not bringing that thing through the fucking plane. So, yeah, I got a Money in the Bank 2019 chair, but even that wasn't that much money. What I'm looking at right now that I would probably chalk up to my most expensive thing that I've treated myself to, and again, there's probably other examples. I'm sure there are. Like, I'm looking at a title belt that I have, but I didn't pay for that. My buddy got that for me because he was actually the person, my buddy at the time, I brought him to WrestleMania with me, paid basically for everything. The travel, the hotel, all that sort of stuff. My parents paid for the travel, and I paid for all the tickets. He didn't really have to pay for much. To pay me back, he got me a championship belt for my birthday a couple of weeks later. The replica Intercontinental Championship I talk about all the time, have signatures on and whatnot of all the former IC champions. I didn't pay for that. Right next to it, though, is the hoverboard from Back to the Future 2. I'm looking at it right now. The hoverboard itself was not expensive. You can buy those cheap online. My brothers got that for me as a Christmas gift 5 years ago. My goal with it was to always have it signed by the main cast members of Back to the Future. So, Leah Thompson, who's Marty's mother. Maybe not Crispin Glover, because he doesn't really, I don't know if he does any meet and greets and stuff. But I'm forgetting his name, but Biff, Tom Wilson. I wanted it signed by Biff, because I met both of them. I met Leah Thompson, I met Biff. I met Tom Wilson, but that was before I got the hoverboard. I met Christopher Lloyd 6 years ago at Comic-Con in 2017, again, pre-hoverboard. And to have Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox on it would have been the ultimate thing, because he never really does meet and greets anymore, because he is, obviously has Parkinson's and stuff. He's not doing great. So we went to New York Comic-Con last year. I posted about this at the time. They were both there. They were doing a meet and greet. So I met them both. Didn't really have a chance to, per se, meet Michael J. Fox. He was just kind of quickly signing stuff, and they would pass the shit along. Did say hi. He responded. That was cool. So it was very quick interaction, a fleeting interaction, but it was very cool. He signed the hoverboard for me. Christopher Lloyd also met him. Didn't get a picture with either individual. That would have been even twice as much. I had Christopher Lloyd sign the hoverboard as well. So again, it was an incredibly expensive purchase. Alexis did pay for a little bit, which was nice of her, but a majority of it, and it was a couple $100 for both signatures, but it was so fucking worth it. I mean, that is a bucket list item for me, to have that item specifically signed by both Lloyd and Michael J. Fox. If I never get Biff or Marty's mom on there, that's totally fine. I've met them before. They're cool. The fact that I have their Funko Pops right next to their signatures, the fact that I have both of them on there, on that hoverboard, means the world to me. And that's all that matters. And it's my favorite movie of all time. So, long answer for a very quick question. I apologize for spending so much time on that. But that would be my answer to you. As far as something I've treated myself to, it would be that. The Back to the Future signatures on my hoverboard from Back to the Future 2, Michael J. Fox, and Christopher Lloyd. And if you want a picture, just let me know and I can send it to you on Twitter or whatever. But although I did tweet about it, and it's probably on my Instagram from back in October when I went to New York Comic-Con. Moving on, now back to the wrestling stuff. Billy from YouTube, his question was, do you see yourself in London for AEW All In? I don't. Listen, I've said this before. Every time I say no, as far as like, oh, are you going to this show? Are you going to Puerto Rico for Backlash? Are you going to this show for that? The answer is typically no, but then it ends up becoming a yes, whether it's because I change my mind or circumstances change or whatever it might be. I will sometimes end up going. For London, I'm pretty confident in that I'm not going. I typically travel to, and cover the WWE pay-per-views. I've gone to 2 AEW pay-per-views. I went to, again, not All Out 2019, but I was at Double or Nothing that year. And I went to, what was the other one? Was that the only one? Oh, no, we went to All Out. I'm sorry. We went to All Out in 2021. Both of those, like, I bought the tickets and everything. We bought our travel. I didn't have that paid for or anything like that because I wasn't really there for work. I was just there to enjoy it as a fan. And both those shows were great. That being said, I'm not really going to London for All In for work, and I don't really feel like paying my way there. And also, I've just done a shitload of traveling this year. I will very likely, because I have been for the last 2 years now, if the where it doesn't work out where I'm not going to SummerSlam, hey, that's fine. They're in fucking Detroit. I don't give a shit. But they're going to be in Detroit this year for SummerSlam. I will likely be on hand for that show as they was in 2021 and 2022. All In is like a month later. I made the mistake a couple of years ago, and it wasn't really a mistake because I enjoyed both shows. But I worked SummerSlam, and then I went to All In as a fan a couple of weeks later. It was a very hectic 2 weeks, because like literally less than 2 weeks after coming back from Vegas, I was leaving again for Chicago for All In, or All Out rather. And it was a great time. Both weekends were great, but it was just a lot. And I've traveled a lot this year already, so I'm kind of trying to take a break from doing any major traveling until SummerSlam. I know that's after SummerSlam, because it's not until late August. SummerSlam is early August. The long answer, the short answer here to my long explanation is that probably not. Although another bucket list item for me is seeing a wrestling show, specifically a WWE or an AEW show in England, because the first ever full Raw that I watched 15 years ago from this past Friday took place in England, took place in London, I think, actually, for that famed William Regal Randy Orton match that made me a fan of wrestling and the whole Regal stuff in general. So to watch a show in London like an All In or Money in the Bank, which WWE is also going to be there in a couple of months, would be amazing. I do not foresee myself going to either show, but I'm very excited to watch both shows from the comfort of my own home. Justin K. from Facebook, their question was, watching Impact Wrestling on a more frequent basis again, and I'm very excited for the future of Trey McGill. Do you think that McGill is primed for a world title run in Impact at some point soon? I don't see him going for the world championship anytime soon. The second part of your question has to do with Steve Macklin. It has to do with Steve Macklin as the Impact World Champion. He's a heel too. Miguel, I feel like the time to put Miguel in the world championship picture would have been 2021. He had just come back. He was building momentum. And then they just went out to do nothing with him. And then he got inserted back into the X Division Championship picture. Thankfully, he won the belt a year and a half ago. And he was champion for a while. Again, he wasn't doing anything for a while. And then he got the belt back recently. And he's a heel now, which is great. But if he's a heel, and Macklin's a heel, and Macklin just won the world championship, and he's probably going to hold the belt until Josh Alexander comes back, I just don't see him getting involved in the world championship picture as long as Steve Macklin is the champion. That being said, like I said, I'm a big Trey McGill fan. I think the guy is great. Could he be a world champion? I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, Rich Swann, who I also think is great, was a world champion at one point as a babyface. McGill's currently a heel. I think if Rich Swann can become champion, they've had a couple of Eric Young is a different story because he was in TNA for so long. He also kind of reinvented himself upon coming back to Impact a couple of years ago. I don't want to say, oh, if those people can become champion, then Trey McGill can be as well. I mean, honestly, I don't see why not. I think Miguel is great. At this current point, no. Can he be world champion down the road? It's certainly possible. Let's put it that way. Going off what I just talked about, his second question was, personally, I don't see the appeal of Steve Macklin as Impact World Champion. Do you see Macklin as the guy that is going to hold the world title until Josh Alexander returns, or could you see him dropping the title at some point before Alexander's return? I was thinking about that. I think he will hold the championship until Josh comes back. The thing with Josh is that I think his injury was serious enough where he might not be back for a while. It might be a good 6 to 8 months, if not longer. That's a pretty long reign for Macklin, and I think Macklin's great. Let me preface this by saying I think Macklin is really, really good. I'm actually very glad they put the championship on him at Rebellion. Macklin is far from the guy that he was in WWE. I honestly never saw the appeal of the guy during his time in NXT, during the Forgotten Sons days. he was decent, but I never really saw him being a future world champion in any promotion. But he really reinvented himself upon coming to Impact a few years ago, got into great shape, and moreover than anything, has just had great fucking matches. And he's had some really good promos as well. He's had a great, steady, slow rise to the top. I think he would have won the championship even if Josh was around and was still champion. I still think Steve would have beaten Josh for the championship regardless. That's the match they've been building to for so long now. It makes sense that Steve is champion now. Maybe Josh comes back and he loses to Steve. Maybe Steve drops the championship but gets it back before Josh comes back. That's also possible. If I had to bet, yes, Steve will be champion by that point, no matter how long it's going to take. Is it possible that he drops it before then as someone like Nick Aldis who just came back to Impact? Yeah, it's definitely possible, although I'm not expecting it. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content. Does great work. His first question was, do you think the upcoming draft will actually accomplish anything, or will it just be more of a rearranging of the furniture, so to speak? You're not wrong with that second expression. It's such a great way of putting it. I do fear that it will be more of the same as far as rearranging the furniture. I love the draft. I'm a big draft guy. I do think it's made a positive impact for certain people and certain brands in the past, especially in recent years as well. This year, though, is different because it will be some rearranging of the furniture if they don't stick to the actual brand split rules. So far, I've heard nothing from reports, or the company themselves have not established this, that coming out of this draft, we will get actual fucking exclusive rosters. None of the shit where they switch brands or they just go and show up on the other show because they can. They've been doing that since Triple H took over, and I assume he was doing that because he wasn't happy with the rosters that Vince kind of left behind, and he just wanted to make up his own storylines and shit like that. And that's totally fine, but you can't do a draft then. If you're doing a draft, you have to actually stick to the brand split rules. If you're not, then there's no point. I do fear it's going to be more of the latter, because there's been no indication so far that tells me, hey, we're actually doing things differently this time, compared to the last 9 months, and we're going to stick to these rosters. I've heard nothing about that. So I'm just assuming they're doing a draft for the sake of doing a draft, to boost a rating for Raw and SmackDown, to pop a rating for both shows. And then it's going to go back to being what it's been for the last 9 months, where it's people showing up on the other show for no real reason. Hopefully that's not the case, but I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. His second question, do you think Jericho has been beneficial to AEW programming the last 2 years or so? It just seems like a lot of what he's involved in either drags on too long or isn't very good in quality because of his creative input. Listen, I think a lot of what Jericho has done, I have not been a fan of. Inner Circle at the end dragged on way too fucking long, and Jericho Appreciation Society has only been around for just over a year, and I'm already ready for it to be over. I mean, the shit is terrible. The shit is awful. I don't really think it's helped anyone involved, to be honest. I think 2.0, they're in a better spot now than they were compared to where they were, before they came to AEW, obviously. They're in a better spot now than they were in WWE or being on Dark or whatever. They don't feel like a serious threat to any tag team title currently. Hager's a fucking waste of a roster spot. Sammy Guevara, I don't give a fuck about at this point. And Daniel Garcia could have really benefited, but they kept him with the group instead of breaking him away when they should have last summer. And maybe they're still headed in that direction, but at this point, I just don't give a fuck about the guy. He's a great wrestler. I honestly care less about him now than I did a year or two ago. The guy's fine, but he just doesn't really do much for me personally at this point. So it's given him something to do. He's been on the show more as a result of the group, but I think JAS has been terrible. Ty Conti and Anna Jay, they feel much less over since joining the group than they were previously. And then Inner Circle didn't really serve much of a purpose. Santana Ortiz broke up anyway, seemingly. I know Santana got hurt, but Sammy didn't really benefit from the group. I mean, he's in a better spot than he was than when he debuted, but that's may have been his own fault. I just don't care about the guy. And Jake Hager's Jake Hager. A lot of his feuds I just haven't really cared about. Like, every time he's done well in a program, it's dragged on for too long, like you said. The MJF storyline went on for way too long. It had its points where it was entertaining, but then it went on for way too long, and some of the matches were good. Like, Jericho was at his peak as a babyface in AEW. He had two different peaks, in my opinion. One, when he first came in, and for that first year that he was world champion, that was great stuff. But you're saying for the last 2 years, that was in 2020. The Orange Cassidy shit, I didn't care about at all. I thought that was terrible. He did the MJF storyline for a year. The Eddie Kingston feud was fine early on. I enjoyed it until it dragged on too long and he went heel again. That was kind of a waste of time. The Blackpool Combat Club feud didn't really do much for me personally. The Ricky Starks feud wasn't really entertaining overall, although they had some good matches and he put him over, thankfully. Hopefully he puts over Adam Cole. I don't know. Honestly, I'm ready for Jericho just to take time off. I'm not saying he should retire or go away. He's helped the company in the sense that he's a big name, working with people that aren't really, that the mainstream viewer of the audience is not going to be familiar with, people like a Ricky Starks or Eddie Kingston or MJF or whatever. MJF's in a better spot now than he was at the time. Like, I'm not saying he's hurt the company in that way. As far as a viewer, from a viewer standpoint, I'm not talking about ratings because he has done great ratings for AEW in the past. I just don't care about a lot of what Jericho's involved in. The JAS stuff is terrible. I think he would be better off on his own for the first time since coming to AEW. When he first came in, he was on his own. And then he debuted Inner Circle on that first Dynamite show back in late 2019. And it's been, I don't want to say downhill ever since, because they had some fun moments early on. But the group is really, that group overstayed its welcome, and then JAS has been no different. It's just been one group to another, and they're basically the exact same thing. I don't think he's added anything to the show as beyond ratings and stuff like that. As far as the actual show goes and storylines, he has really added very little to Dynamite. I would much rather, and I'm a big Jericho fan, I would much prefer him taking time off and coming back on his own than continuing on with what he's doing right now. At least we're getting fresh feuds with people like Ricky Starks and Adam Cole, and he's putting these people over like Claudio. I applaud him for that. He does a good job of that. The problem is that a lot of the storylines just aren't good. The matches have been great for the most part from Jericho. The matches with Danielson last year were great. Jericho's had a really good in-ring year this past year. The storylines suck, and that's the issue. A lot of them just bleed together, aren't entertaining, and he's just at a point now where the promos and stuff are just completely fucking obnoxious. So I know he's a heel. I know that's the point. I get it. I just haven't really looked forward to a Jericho program in a while. The Ricky Starks one started out well enough, but again, they drag on too long, and they lose a lot of steam, and by the time the match finally comes where they blow the match off or blow the feud off, I'm just like, thank God it's finally over. And that shouldn't be how I feel. His next question, non-wrestling related, but are you planning to watch Evil Dead Rise? Not sure if you've seen any of the previous installments, but this upcoming one has gotten a lot of rave reviews already. I don't plan on seeing it because, like you said, to answer that part of your question, I have not seen any of the previous installments. Typically, when I see stuff like that, I'll have to go back and watch all the previous installments. For example, I saw John Wick 3 a couple of years ago, thought it was a great movie, did not appreciate it as much at the time than I do now, as much as I do now, because at the time I hadn't seen John Wick 1 and 2. And you're probably asking, why would you see 3 if you haven't seen 1 and 2? Especially if they all kind of connect. Because I went with my family and they were going, and I was like, fuck it, why not? I enjoyed it. I like a good action movie. But before I saw 4 recently, I went back and watched 1 through 3 on Peacock in the week preceding 4, and I loved all those movies that much more, having gone back and seen them. Same thing for 4. So I'm not a big jumping into a movie franchise, unless they don't connect and it doesn't really matter. I'm more of like, I would rather go back and watch the previous installments before watching that next one. I just don't have the time right now to watch the Evil Dead movies. If I hear it's that good, for example, I follow a channel here on YouTube called New Rockstars. They're amazing. I know some of the people that work there, specifically the guy Tommy Bechtold. He's awesome. We've connected on Twitter. He's awesome. Anything that they cover, like Marvel-related, Star Wars-related, any shows like that they cover, I tend to go out of my way to watch. Because if it's good enough for them to cover, and they don't cover everything, it's good enough for me. Like, I saw the Mario movie, and I loved it. I saw Scream 6 about a month ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I still have yet to watch Knock at the Cabin. That's on Peacock now. I'll go back and watch that at some point. I watched Barbarian last year. It came out last year. I watched it last month. Enjoyed it. So stuff like that, I'll go out of my way to watch. Top Gun Maverick, finally caught up on it a year later. Fucking loved it. Thought it was a great movie. If they cover Evil Dead Rise, which I don't think they will, then I would watch it if they do, because that tells me, okay, this is worth watching. If not, then I won't. So we'll see. Most likely not, but if it is getting rave reviews and it's like in this conversation where like you have to see it, then maybe I will. But it's more a matter of time than anything else. At Bill Meister88 from Twitter, his first question was, probably too early to tell, but who are your picks for Money in the Bank winners in London? Who would you like to see win, if different from who you think will win? Who I want to win for the men's and who I think very likely could, based on a rumor that came out last week, albeit not from the most credible account. I mean, that account that it came from, not that it's not credible, but it's not PW Insider or even Meltzer or Fightful. It was some random Twitter account. Not to say they've gotten stuff right or wrong in the past, but I'm kind of skeptical. Saying that LA Knight could win and is planned to win this year's men's Money in the Bank briefcase. I hope he is, and he's my pick to win. He's ready for it. He needs to be booked better prior to that point and win more fucking matches and not lose constantly. But other than that, I think the guy is great. He would be a perfect fit for that briefcase. I've heard people say Logan Paul. I guess I could see that happening. I like Logan Paul. The guy is great. The problem is that Roman Reigns is the champion. I guess you could have him hold it until Cody Rhodes is champion. Yeah, I just don't want a heel champion anytime soon, and I don't think he's winning it to lose again. And whoever wins the briefcase should win at some point. And Logan Paul already went for the championship last year and lost, so not this year. It should go to LA Knight. Cody Rhodes is another possibility if he wins it and then chooses to cash in at SummerSlam and announces in advance. That's also possible. That's completely fine with me. Montez Ford is a dark horse. I think it's too soon for him because he isn't even on his own yet. And it's not like him and Angelo. They've teased. They've done some single stuff. Like Montez was in the U.S. Championship Elimination Chamber match. But they're still teaming on the regular. So I would break him off on his own before giving him the briefcase. Or at least have the Profits acknowledge, hey, we're going to be doing more single stuff than tag team stuff. And they haven't said that yet. So I'm going to go LA Knight for the men. Want him to win. Think he will win. For the women, I've said this before, but I want Tegan Nox to win because she's not over at all right now. She needs to be built back up. She needs some, not reps as far as improving, but like reps to get on TV and getting over because currently she's not. I would love to see Tegan Nox win it. I think it's more likely someone like Raquel Rodriguez wins it, and she's good, and that would be fine. A babyface won it last year in Liv Morgan, so probably not. And a babyface also won in 2021 with Nikki Cross. Asuka was basically a face when she won in 2020. Bayley was a face when she won in 2019. We need a heel Miss Money in the Bank that holds it for more than a fucking day. That's what we need. Tegan Nox would not be that person. Raquel currently, unless she turns before then, is not that person. Chelsea Green, I just don't see being on that level. I like Chelsea in her current gimmick, but I just don't really see her cashing in successfully, so it's kind of a waste. Ronda, no thanks. I could see it being Ronda. She's probably the most likely person to win the briefcase and have her cash in or attempt to cash in on Rhea or whatever. No thanks. Thinking of anyone else on the roster? God forbid it's like someone like Lacey Evans. No thanks. Xia Li, no thanks. I like Xia Li, but no one cares. I know no one cares about Tegan Nox either, but I just feel like Tegan Nox would make more sense. On the Raw side of things, what heels did they even have? I don't even know. I'm not even sure. So honestly, I'm just going to stick with Tegan Nox or Raquel Rodriguez. On the Raw side, Candice, she needs to get over. Same thing with Michin. Piper Niven would be nice. She'd be possible. But again, she'd have to be built back up because currently she's just not doing much. So I'll go Raquel Rodriguez, the most likely person, even though she's one half of the tag team champions right now. Who I want to win, Tegan Nox. And that's just because I'm Tegan Nox Mark, and I think she'd be a good fit for that role. His second question, not a huge shock to see Nick Aldis back in Impact with his history in the company, and also Mickie James being there, but what are your thoughts on the decision, and have AEW and WWE missed a trick by not signing him? Most definitely. I said that on Twitter when he returned to Impact on Sunday. And listen, maybe I'm in the minority here, and maybe he's just a major asshole, and we just don't know it. I don't know. I know there's been reports and stuff about stuff like that with him, and he's difficult to deal with or whatever. It doesn't sound like the NWA departure was really his fault at all. I'm glad he's at least an Impact. It's a bigger platform than NWA. I'll say that much. But still, I feel like Nick Aldis should be in one of the big companies. To me, he fits the WWE mold to a T. I've been saying that for 10 fucking years now. And the fact that he hasn't gotten there for whatever reason, to me, makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what happened there and why they didn't sign him. I feel like they missed the boat by not signing him. Same thing with AEW. And I heard someone try to tell me, and listen, I completely understand. Listen, he would have gotten lost in the shuffle in AEW. I'm glad he didn't go there. But listen, I would rather have him there than go back to Impact, somewhere where he's already been and been world champion. Yeah, it's a nice platform for him, and it's better than an NWA. But I would rather see him doing stuff in AEW or at least attempt to get over there. And some of the audience is probably familiar with him over there. I'd rather see him doing that than back in Impact, and I love Impact, but he's already been in Impact before multiple times. He's been the world champion before. He's been tag team. Like, he's already conquered Impact. He debuted there 15 years ago. It's time for the next step. The guy's not getting any younger. And AEW or WWE would have been it. So I don't know what the issue is there. Maybe they offered him a deal and he said no. I know that was the case a couple of years ago. Maybe Tony Khan never got over that. I don't know. But I feel like he would have been perfectly fit in WWE, and they didn't sign him either. So I definitely feel like they missed the ball with him. I feel like his style would have been picture perfect for WWE. And if not there, then in AEW, but he's not there either. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, this month marks 10 years since the Raw after WrestleMania 29 happened. What are your thoughts on that? It's crazy. I was a senior in high school at the time, and I love that Raw, and I still love that Raw. It's still a great show in retrospect. It was much fucking better than WrestleMania the night before, I'll tell you that much. WrestleMania 29 sucked. That show was not good, especially after the greatness that was, to me, WrestleMania 28 and the greatness that was to come with WrestleMania 30. 29 was awful. So that Raw after WrestleMania with the crowd hijacking, because a lot of what we got just wasn't great, like Orton and Sheamus, who gives a shit? It's not like WWE intentionally did great stuff. They did some pretty dumb stuff, and the crowd kind of let them know it. But they were really hot for that show, and it was great to see. They want to fucking slam you for it, which is cringy, but the crowd did. But it was a really fun night, and it kind of started this trend of like electric post-WrestleMania Raws. And it started, I would say, with like the post-WrestleMania Raw in 2012. I mean, that's always been the case with like eventful post-WrestleMania Raws. But in 2012, like the crowd was hot. Lesnar came back. Rock was on the show. That, to me, was like the first one. 2013, they took it to another level. And they had hot post-WrestleMania crowd Raws for like a couple of years there. A really hot stretch that was a lot of fun. And they just haven't recaptured that magic since. But the fact that it was 10 years ago is wild to think about, to say the least. His second question was, had Cesaro not left WWE, would you have seen Triple H booking him to challenge Gunther for the Intercontinental title? Yes, I would have. He would not have won. I don't think he... maybe he could have won because he had never been Intercontinental Champion before, but I feel like had he stayed, he more than likely would have challenged Gunther like Nakamura did, gotten a great main event on SmackDown out of it, and then that would have been it. And then he would have been right back to doing nothing. Like Nakamura's done nothing since Triple H took over mostly. He's just been kind of there, if not there at all. Cesaro would have been in the exact same spot. So I feel like he made the right decision by leaving WWE when he did. Next question, also from @Iwagu91. Do you think that Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair is the best women's match in the WWE to date? It's up there. I don't know if I would call it the best. Bianca and Becky may have had the best main roster women's match I've ever seen the year before at WrestleMania 38. I don't know which one was better. I was there for both. Both matches were outstanding. I'd have to think about it some more and rewatch both matches, but they're kind of tied. If you're talking the entire company, to me, the best women's match in company history is in NXT, and that's Bayley and Sasha from TakeOver Brooklyn. I was there for that one. I was there for all three matches, and I thought that match was an amazing piece of business with the story they told, the moment, the execution, everything. Everything about that match was fucking magical, and the reaction and everything, the moment. And it's all about making moments. Not to say the other matches didn't, and those were at WrestleMania, but that match is just super significant. It got women into wrestling like Indy Hartwell and people like that. So yeah, love that match and really enjoyed it. So that match to me would be the best in company history, but Rhea and Charlotte and even Becky and Bianca from last year come very close. If not, beat it in your opinion. Maybe they do, but to me it's still Bayley and Sasha from Brooklyn in 2015. At @noob_n_code TV from Twitter, from TV. No, his thing is at @noob_n_code TV from Twitter, rather. That's what I meant to say. With Io Sky challenging Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship, will this be the end of Damage Control? The question is, who will turn on who? Will Bayley turn on Sky and Kai, or will Dakota and Io turn on Bayley? I don't know who's turning on who, but I do think they're breaking up, and thank God it's about time. The group, to me, outstayed their usefulness a couple of months ago, like probably after War Games when they lost there too. They stayed together for the Becky feud, and they lost that as well. They just can't win when it matters most. They're just they're a group of losers, and I love all three women. I think they're great. They're very talented. WWE dropped the ball, the booking of the group. They just never really found their footing from an on-air standpoint for whatever reason. And yeah, I don't know. I think they're just a great group. It's unfortunate they were booked so poorly, and I just don't care about them at this point. So they need to break up. I think they are over. And not over in the sense of like, oh, people love or hate them. People don't give a shit. They're done. And I think that the timing is interesting with the draft coming up. So I do think they're splitting up in the draft, as they should. I could see Bianca beating Io and then Io going to SmackDown. And then break up Bayley and Dakota, turn Dakota into a babyface. I could see Bayley turning on them because she's the one jealous of Io. But maybe it's the other way around. I think Bayley stays the heel and Dakota and Io go face, but that's just me. Their next question, your thoughts on Trish Stratus' promo from Raw. I have to agree with her. If it weren't for Trish Stratus, there wouldn't be a women's evolution. I thought it was a good promo. I thought it was unfortunate they had to pipe in boos and stuff like that, and the what chants are terrible. But I thought her explanation made sense. Her delivery was good. I'm looking forward to the Trish and Becky feud. It's another non-title feud to have in that division. I like that a lot. I liked it. I think heel Trish, as we saw 20 years ago, has potential, even in 2023. And I really like the promo. I think it would have been better suited in a sit-down, interview environment, but I thought it was still a pretty good promo overall. Next question from @E13A. Final 5 questions are from them. First one being, do you think Solo Sikoa will help the Usos regain the tag team titles? I think it's very possible. I think it's a strong possibility, actually. I'm not expecting it. I'm very worried that Owens and Zayn are going to be losing the tag team titles so quickly to the Usos. I just feel like that would be a massive mistake. I think there's more story to tell the Usos teasing tension with Roman by not being tag team champions. Maybe Solo holds up his end of the bargain by doing what he needs to do, not just in that match, but just in general by winning all of his matches, and the Usos don't. I feel like that's more likely. So I think the Usos will lose, but I'm very worried they might get the belts back, specifically since Night of Champions typically has seen every championship defended. Owens and Zayn don't work the Saudi shows. They may not be there. They may have to drop the titles before that show even comes, and that would be very unfortunate. Second question from @U13A. If it happens, do you think AEW's brand split with CM Punk leading a Saturday show will work out? Listen, I think the idea of a brand split is fine, but if they're only doing it, and I don't think they're only doing it, but if they're only doing it because CM Punk doesn't get along with the Elite and they want to keep them separate, that to me is very fucking dumb. I think that's a very dumb reason to do a brand split. You got to do it because you believe in it and you want to do it, not because CM Punk doesn't get along with this guy or that guy. That's pretty stupid. You either let CM Punk go, or you have them all work under the same umbrella and you get over it, because this will not end well. At some point, you have to address the issue head on and have them get over it, regardless of who has to get over it, whether it's Punk, the Bucks, or Omega, or whatever. It sounds like it's more between Punk and the Bucks, and maybe Paige or whatever, or at least was. And Jericho too, I guess. They need to get the fuck over it, and keeping them separate, I mean, at some point they're going to have to interact. And this will not end well, I tell you right now. I'll tell you that right now, this will not end well if they go along this route. And if that's the idea, that's very dumb. So the brand split could work. They have enough people to make it work, I think. I actually like the idea of a brand split. But for those reasons, if they're doing it for that reason, that's pretty stupid. If Punk's the head of this new Saturday show, maybe it'll be more important than Rampage, but they really need to make it important. They really do need to make this Saturday show important, because Rampage is not. I would get rid of Rampage. It's a fucking waste of a show. This Saturday show should be what Rampage was, a 2-hour show. I say in prime time, but it's on a Saturday night. I'm probably not watching that live. That's just too much wrestling. Get rid of Rampage. Get rid of one of the dark shows, if not both of them. That's just me. But, yeah, we'll see how this works out. I'm not the most optimistic about this idea. His last 3 questions. Have you heard about Mercedes Monet's run in New Japan Stardom? Of course, I've talked about it here on the show. I haven't seen any of her title defenses. I've been recommended to check them out, but I just haven't had the time. I'm not a New Japan person like you or Stardom or whatever. I heard the matches were great. I've seen highlights on Twitter. I saw the match where she debuted in at Wrestle Kingdom. Not the match, but her first appearance back in January, and that was it. But I've heard she's done well, and she wants to move to Japan full-time, and if so, that's great. Honestly, if she has no plans to go to either major company anytime soon, if ever, moving to Japan makes perfect sense. So if she's happy and enjoying herself and she's doing great work, then more power to her. Their second to last question here, Push Repackaged released Austin Theory, Dominic Mysterio, and Karrion Kross. This is a good one, and timing is everything, because a year ago I would have given you a very different answer. But this is a great question because all 3 guys I'm a fan of. Dominic has come a long way. I think to get rid of him now would be dumb, because I do think he has potential. He has great heat right now. You can argue, what about when the Ray feud is over? Is he still worth keeping around? I think so, because I think he's gotten a lot better as a heel on the mic and as a character, being comfortable as a character and stuff like that. Either way, honestly, I would have to release Karrion Kross. I think Karrion is great, and even so far, they've given him a decent push, but not a strong push. I just think Dominic and Austin Theory have a better idea, or better potential, more potential, and I wouldn't have said this 6 months ago. I think they have more potential to be a top performer in the company than Karrion Kross. So I'd have to release Karrion Kross, unfortunately, because he already got fired once before. It's either push or repackage Theory or Dominic. Dominic, the jail stuff is hysterical, but if you push him, like, what are you doing with him is the thing. Like, is he a mid-card champion right now? I don't know. I would push Theory and give him more of a push, but it's weird to say, I would push the U.S. champion because he hasn't been pinned in 5 months. He just needs to be, like, involved in more important feuds and not be winning, like, in shitty fashion all the time, although I know that's the heel that he's supposed to be. I think Theory's already getting pushed. I would repackage Theory, make him more serious like they said they were teasing at one point, then they moved away from it. And then push Dominic. Not towards the main event, but push Dominic towards like a mid-card title maybe. They're both held by heels right now, but Dominic's like one of the best things going in WWE right now, so pushing him in some sort of role beyond the Ray feud, you wouldn't get any complaints out of me from that, about that. Just because he's been playing his role so well in the last couple of months, why wouldn't you reward that, And his last question, have you heard about Goldberg potentially doing a retirement world tour? I've seen people talking about it. I mean, listen, good for him. This idea that he's talking about where he said, Vince promised me a retirement match and I never got it. Dude, you got your fucking retirement match at WrestleMania 33. WrestleMania 33, and I guarantee you WWE did not expect him to wrestle again after that because they put him in the Hall of Fame a year later. Typically, if they don't think you're done, they won't put you in the Hall of Fame. But they put him in the Hall of Fame, and then he came back a year later because they offered him money for one of the Saudi shows. And it's just been up and down since then. He's had some great moments since coming back a couple of years ago. That entire 2016 to 2017 run was hot. He comes back in 2019, has that terrible match with The Undertaker, redeems himself at SummerSlam. Should have gone off on that note, but he didn't. And I like Goldberg, too. I am a Goldberg fan. But, like, in 2020, the Fiend match happens. It's fucking terrible, and he gets another world title reign for no reason. And then at WrestleMania, that he loses to Braun Strowman, puts over the next star, which Braun got fired a year later anyway, but okay. And then he comes back a year later to do the Bobby Lashley stuff, and that stuff sucked. The Drew McIntyre feud was whatever. He put over Drew. The Bobby match sucked. They had a rematch that was really good. He should have closed it off then in Saudi Arabia. He had a great final match with Bobby Lashley. He was competitive. He won, whatever. And then he comes back again. He comes back again in 2020, 2022. What did he do last year? I don't even remember. Oh, the Roman Reigns match. He came back again for the Roman Reigns match. Honestly, I had no issue with it because they never got their match in 2020. And Roman, as he should have, fucking beat Goldberg in 5 or 6 minutes. It was basically a glorified squash. It was exactly what it needed to be. What the fuck was he expecting? A 15-minute Goldberg match is not good. Goldberg, unlike Brock, I think Brock can still go to an extent. Goldberg cannot. He's better in short and sweet matches like that. That was his retirement match. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I just don't get it. Like, the guy's still complaining, I never got my final match. That was your final match. Were we not watching the same show? It's like, dude, what the fuck do you want? Like, do you want to go over in your last match? And that's the thing. People saying, we should face Wardlow at All In. Listen, yeah, if he wants to go in there and get squashed in 2 minutes, then absolutely. The problem is that I think the guy wants like a competitive 10-minute match. He doesn't have it in him at this point. We've seen him try to have competitive matches in the last couple of years, and they're not good. They're not good. So doing the short and sweet matches where he puts other people over is the best use of him, unless he's squashing someone. But again, he's had that opportunity to retire on that note in the past, and he has not. And WWE's kept bringing him back, but he's also agreeing to come back, So in AEW, it's like, okay, would they put him in a tag team match or something? Is there even an appeal there for a Goldberg match in London? Like, who gives a shit? A Wardlow match would be cool if Wardlow went in there and fucking beat him in 5 minutes. I don't think Goldberg wants that is the problem. So if he wants more than that, then don't bother bringing him back. He is not valuable enough to give him another run. He had his 5-year return run. That was 4 years too many. Again, like I've said before, I've interviewed the guy. I like Goldberg. He's a very nice guy. Anytime I've interacted with him, I am good on another Goldberg match. No fucking thanks. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for episode 490 here today of #AskGSM for April 19th, 2023. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop your question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video, and I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy the rest of your week, weekend, whatever it might be. Enjoy the rest of April, and I'll catch your ass down the road.